Hey, I wanted to jump on real quick and talk a little bit about the announcement that CrossFit came out with yesterday, talking about the expansion of the sport and how they're going to shine a spotlight on athletes across all divisions by separating the age group and adaptives from the elite games and moving them to basically three major events: the Wheelwad Games, the Pit Team Throwdown for the teens, and the Legends Championship for the masters. And they're touting this as an opportunity to increase the field for masters and teenage athletes and nearly double the number of divisions for adaptive athletes, which I think is very cool in concept. They also announced it's going to provide a chance for them to evolve their competition for an internationally scalable comp in the future, which is no secret they're looking to go international at some point. But it does open up a lot of questions for me that I hope we get answers to soon. The first one being, is this really an expansion? It's an expansion for the CrossFit Games, but not for the community at large, and certainly not for the age group and adaptive athletes. They all just lost major events in this deal. Again, not a big deal with CrossFit Games, but if you're a competitive athlete, think about it. The adaptive athletes, as an example, have very limited competitions that they can go to. They had the games, Wheelwad, Wadapalooza, and Wadsalona, and now they're losing one because Wheelwad will become the game. So now you go from four to three. Now, admittedly, Wadapalooza has just added another event on the West Coast, but still, it's not a net gain for the adaptive athletes. And same for the Masters, where they had the games, the Wadapalooza Masters Fitness Championship and the Legends Championship. And now one of those, in this case, the Legends Championship, is going to become the games level event. So again, they're losing a competition. So I'm sure those athletes have to be disappointed. I'll be curious to see if someone else fills that spot for those athletes or if they just go away forever. Who knows? The other question that immediately jumped to mind to me is, how is all of this going to be funded? Dave said, or was quoted on one of the posts as saying that over 50% of the open money comes from masters athletes. And so it begs the question, how much of that money is going to be allocated toward these events? If history tells you anything, it's going to be very little. The mix of masters athletes, to my knowledge, hasn't changed much over the last few years. And we've seen how much of that budget has gone to the masters competition, where, as an example, last year we had the static camera for age groups and adaptive, and they had very, very little coverage up until the last day at the games level. It also makes me ask, are they going to invest anything in these events? Or are they going to be run as they have been in the past, meaning they'll be run as individual events? And in this case, CrossFit's going to come in and either help with the programming or just offer more resources if they grow. I also wonder if these three events will get a games level experience, or will they have the same sponsor as the elite? So, assuming sponsorship stays the same and Noble continues to sponsor the CrossFit Games, will they sponsor these three events, or will they get a different sponsor altogether? Which, for the sake of the argument, could be a really good thing to bring in more sponsors for those individual events. But will they get the same games level experience? Because that was a complaint for many of the adaptive athletes, is they got a subpar games level experience in Madison this year. And then the last part around the finances of it is, I wonder what happens when budget cuts happen. I think we have to remember we're still in a very early recessionary environment, and it's likely to get worse. You have a couple of wars brewing. The United States economy is not in the best shape it's been in some time. And so you have to wonder, as budget cuts happen, which I think are likely at some point, which comp loses budget first, or do they get budget at all? I don't know. There's just so many questions there around the finances of how this is going to be funded and what that looks like for those athletes that'll be competing at those individual events. And then probably the biggest question I had that's unanswered is, what is this going to do with the open? Will it diminish the open? I know it's probably not an initial thought for a lot of people, but when I look at the Open, it was built last year and actually many years as a giant community event. And when you look at this announcement, this is anything but a community event. In the past, what you've had is you have the Open as a community event, and then it will culminate in a community festival. And so now what you're getting is a community event of the Open that's going to culminate in a sports festival. that's only going to house the best of the best, the elites, the cool kids, whatever you want to call them, but certainly a far different experience. And I get it. The games is a sporting event and you want to see the best of the best compete. That's where most of the eyes are on the target. But to the point of the open, imagine you're part of the adaptive division. Not only did you get segregated at the games level, but you just got relegated for the open. Part of this these changes stated that Wheelwad is going to be doing the adaptive competition from the open to the games. And so it opens so many questions for me is will they be doing the open at the same time as us? Will they be doing the same open events? Will affiliates that have adaptive classes have to run two opens in order to help people compete? I realize there's a lot of complexity around this, and there's certainly an argument to be made that the needs of the adaptive community are different, and a different open for them could make their experience better. But you could also make the counter argument that no one wants to be excluded. And I think CrossFit's opened themselves up to this criticism by touting that this is an expansion and a more inclusive opportunity without the full details. They've done this in the past where they give you a big splashy announcement and then kind of trickle out the details. And I would encourage them to start getting the details out sooner than later. People have to start booking trips and making plans and the opens in February. So I think a lot of us, myself included, are going to want to make a decision. Do we want to spend the $20 without the full details of where that money's going? Right now, we have more questions than answers. It's not a shock, but we do. I think if there's one thing that I know to be true is that you have to look at history to see what the future will likely hold. And if that holds true, the biggest question we all should be asking here is based on how CrossFit has operated the game season just in the past few years, can they better execute on four events instead of just one? Time will tell.